We
Yeah, there it is already. Yep, he got it. It's being recorded. So, this has been some very unprecedented times for us to have the Hispanic Leadership Meeting, which traditionally we have in person. And for the last 18 months, we've been having our meetings on Zoom. And we have our technical challenges, of course, like every other organization that we know when they get their meetings to Zoom. So, but I want to welcome everybody, and in lieu of having people stand up and introduce themselves for like a 10-second infomercial, look on the screen and look at the names. You can also pull where it says participant and scroll down and look at the names. Everybody's going to be muted by our IT. And then you can use your reaction button to raise your hand, like I'm doing right now. If you have a questions later on when it comes to the question and answer period, or if you have a very important comment to share that you don't really want to wait too long. And we'll have Alicia Yasich also look at some of the questions that may be in the chat. And in the chat, you can address your message to everyone, or you can do the drop down and address your message individually to the person on the drop down. And that way, if you need to communicate just between you and another person in the meeting, you can do it via your chat. So without further ado, I'm going to read to you basically how the agenda is going to go tonight. We're going to have a treasurer's report by Karen Aresti. We'll have board elections and bylaw amendment by Mauricio Gobo. Betsy will talk about the topic for the panel and sharing a little bit about the topic tonight. Betsy would also introduce the panel and the panel participants. We'll have open questions around 7:15, 7:18. And those open questions, if it's related to the topic discussion, will be moderated by Betsy Cohen. And then we're going to give thanks to the attendants, the presenter, and the panelists, and make a motion to close the meeting. And that's basically how we want our agenda to go. We have another board member that's in Atlanta that's trying to get on board, and I'm gonna help her while I'm on mute. And Karen, if you'd like to give us your treasurer's report, and Mauricio, if you want to let her share the screen if she needs it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you can see your screen, Karen?
Yeah, can you see?
Yes, we can see.
I try to shove it all in. If you need to make it larger, you can do that on your own systems. If everybody can hear me okay. So this, oops, looks like the, well, sorry about the formatting, but the numbers are still the same. So hang on, Jeffrey's coming in. Okay. Basically, our accounts, I'll make this fairly straightforward. Our accounts are at Midwest Bank Center. We have four main accounts. The main operating account, we separate them by the larger projects, Hispanic Capital Day, the Hispanic Scholarship Alliance, and then there is a second scholarship account that comes to the Hispanic Leadership Group. Just to explain, I only became treasurer in, I'm trying to remember, Tony, I think it was February or March. We had accounts at Midwest Bank and we expanded some of those accounts. And so when I started taking over, those accounts became active and updated at different times during the year, which is why you see at that last column, the effective date, that the information is shared. Our total accounts right now in cash on hand is $22,490. One of the things we were able to do very effectively this year in the scholarships, both through the Hispanic Scholarship Alliance and the Leaders Group scholarships, was really share money with a lot of different folks. So there are about 30 students who received $1,000 each through the HSA, and an additional 7 students who were funded through the Hispanic Leaders Group. And I would say, other than the major fundraising that was done from people in membership and sponsorships generally, people who make donations throughout the year, were dollars earned through the Premio Esperanza honoring Sal Valadez, October 8th, which gives us cash now that we can move around for bits and pieces hang on. There you go. For the coming year. The next big event will be Hispanic Capital Day, which I think is a little bit up in the air right now because of the virus. So we would hope to be in person and to be traveling to Jefferson City and to be able to be there in larger numbers. I don't have a crystal ball. We'll wait and see how that's going to be. I'm happy to answer any questions if people have. Hearing none, everybody's stunned into silence. Let me just confirm the one note on that page, which really is quite important, and that is that all the work that is done on the benefit of the Hispanic Leaders Group is done by people who are volunteering, and that includes seriously both Tony and Maria Maldonado.
We couldn't get on with the new email that I sent you.
Oh my gosh, oh my
Tony.
Hang on, hold on a second. I think I can do this.
I just muted Tony.
Okay, thanks. So we really are spending almost next to nothing on overhead. We don't maintain an office. We are very spare in how we spend money. And I think the intent really is for so much of that to go to the scholarships. And again, Hispanic Capital Day, and we'll see if there are other projects that Tony will talk about in terms of his director's report that we've spent some money on that impact the community in terms of our double mission around advocacy and education. I think that's my report.
Okay, thank you very much, Carrie.
You're welcome.
I will start sharing my screen because I'm gonna talk about a voting that we did to change the bylaw of the HLG. But before I go there, I just want to re-emphasize, oh my gosh, my English is not going well today. Re-emphasize what Karen just said. Nobody in the HLG has received any money to do the work that we do. It's all volunteer based. So we do amazing work. We do a lot. We do great events. We get a lot of money. The money that you have, it's to pay the bills and to go through to the scholarships. This is incredible. So thank you, Karen, for sharing those numbers. It's beautiful. For me, this is the beautiful thing that you do in the HLG. Now, I will present to you the results of a vote that you did to change the bylaws that you have. The current bylaws that you have allows the chair to run for a maximum of 4 years. And we asked our membership. A lot of you that is in the meeting are not members, but we asked our membership to vote to change this clause to allow the chair to run for 6 years. That's the same term that all the other officers of our board can run, and also the same term that a board of director can stay in the board. So we want to make everything the same instead of having the only one case of an officer to run just 4 years. That's the chair. We had not many votes, but we had 18 votes, and all of them were, well, first let me tell you that the vote was electronic, and 15 people voted through the electronic method, and 14 voted yes, and 1 voted no. But we have 3 votes that were not through the electronic way, due challenges of people getting into the electronic voting. And those 3 votes were done via mail or phone, and they were all yeses. So we have 18 total votes, 17 are yeses, 1 no. So the change on the bylaw, it's approved. And I thank everybody that voted, that's a member of the HLG and was able to vote. Again, a lot of you that are over here are not members of the HLG, but we need to share this because this is our annual membership meeting. So with that said, I will pass the words to Betsy. Well, before I go there, any questions from anybody regarding this change on the bylaw and how the vote proceeds? Silence means no. So we will move forward with the agenda. And the next up in the agenda, it's our dear Beth to talk about the challenges of internationals getting a job in the USA, mainly in St. Louis. And then a panel that's going to be followed up with 3 brilliant ladies to talk about these two together with Betsy. Betsy, please go ahead and mute yourself. Do you want to share this? Do you want to share anything on the screen, Betsy, or
No.
do you want me just to put an image out there for
Nope,
this?
we're all good. I'd like to have everyone here. All is good. So thank you very much for having us here. And it gives me great pleasure to see you all here and also to have my panel when you talk about 3 brilliant women, one of them being your wife. That's a really good thing, as we have great talent in this community. I also particularly want to congratulate Sal Valdez on receiving the award from the HLG most recently. And I want to also mention that I see some other friends from the community and allies, as Karen was talking about with Jeffrey from Vitendo for Africa. And also I see that we have Jared Hankinson from the governor's office. And I think that that's wonderful to have Jared here, who has interest in our foreign-born community and representing Governor Parson in the state. I want to just share in the beginning a little bit about why I decided to write a book called Welcome to the USA, You're Hired, a guide for foreign-born people seeking jobs. I have been in my role at the St. Louis Mosaic Project, which is part of the World Trade Center of the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. I've been in my role for 8 years after my career at Nestle Purina. And it's been the pandemic did many things for all of us. It changed how we think, it changed how we work. And I was posting a lot of information about jobs on LinkedIn. And partly because the St. Louis Mosaic Project often is a convener and we have meetings and we bring people together. We do many special activities. And what I found was we weren't doing those, and I was doing more one-on-one connecting online with Zoom and doing more career advice. And that's also true with what Susan Gobo and Annie Schlafly, who's here, we're doing with a lot of women in our International Mentor Program and the Spouse Program. And so it was really clear that a lot of us were doing these things that were more one-on-one. And I was hearing in people's voices what was going on with their workforce questions in their lives and their stresses. And I was thinking, I really love my work at the St. Louis Mosaic Project. But my question to myself, and I think this is kind of a reflective question, was, what can I do to be of more service to more people? How can I be a better person? How can I contribute more to others locally, nationally, internationally? Do I have a bigger purpose in my life? I mean, that's really kind of a philosophical question. And as I was sitting here in my home office, one thought was I could do more coaching of people who are foreign born, because I coached a lot of people at Nestle Purina and then in my last 8 years. So in addition to Mosaic, I could coach more people, but I was posting a lot on LinkedIn, and some of you in this chat today and others said, Betsy, maybe you should write a book. It's hard to find your advice on LinkedIn. Maybe you should write a book. And I never thought that I would write a book. It was never a dream of mine. It just was never something I thought about. I really didn't know how to go about it, but I decided that maybe I should write that book. And I had different ideas about what the book should be. Should it be for the employers about hiring foreign-born people and also the job seekers? Should it be both? Should it really be designed for those foreign-born people who are seeking jobs? And I talked to different people. I started off thinking it would be about both, but that became very confusing because when you have two audiences, it's really hard to do a good job. And I truly then, as I thought deep in my heart, was I could be of best service taking my knowledge to help foreign-born people find a job. And if I could, as Karen said, as an ally, as someone who is not foreign-born, if I could tell them what I know and all the things that I tell people individually, the advice I give on so many topics, it is my advice, and you may disagree with it, but I've done a lot of this, and I thought there is no book. I went looking. There is no book for foreign-born people seeking a job. There is none out there. There are a few books about. If anyone needs to mute, please do if there's a problem there. There's some books about like how do you use an immigration lawyer to get a visa. And again, that's important, but that was not at the heart of what I felt was needed. What I felt was needed was more of the realities of what happens with the process, how you feel, what do you have to say, what do you do, what is possible. And I had so many case studies of people. We've helped hundreds, and I have worked with international students, executives, people that are joining family members. I mean, I've worked with hundreds, thousands of people, and all their faces and stories were in my head. And so I interviewed several book coaches, and I met a book coach who I really liked. And it's interesting because a book coach is not really the same as an editor. It's someone who really helped me decide the format of the book and how should I structure it and how could I tell these stories better. And so she said to me, write down all the case studies of people. And one of our panelists, Shirley Moran, was one of the case studies. So I started writing down what happened to people, what was good, what was bad, and what was a problem, and then what did they do, and why did something work or why didn't it work? And so I wrote the cases down, and then I started changing the names and the countries because I didn't want anyone to know that it was really Shirley or that it was really somebody else. Another thing that this coach suggested was, she said, if you do a book of your advice, that would be terrific. But if you could get other expert contributors, the book would be so much more valuable. And so that is where Nalini, and Nalini contributed to the area where I was writing a chapter about why you as a person might need an immigration lawyer or as a company. And Nalini contributed to that part of the chapter, as an immigration lawyer. And also Susan Gobo wrote about people who move here and are transferred and are spouses and what do they go through and why we have a program for them. And Annie Schlafly talked about and wrote about the International Mentor Program and how local people help our international people. I also had other people from around the country be expert contributors. I wanted this book to be a national, international book. It's not just about St. Louis. It has people from around the country, like Global Detroit wrote about international students, Welcoming America wrote, World Education Services wrote. Another thing that I will say, which might surprise you, is I got approval from the Economic Development Partnership before I started writing that I would write this on my own time, not on work time, and I would fund all the expenses myself. And it would be my book. It's not the book, it's not the property of the Economic Development Partnership. Again, this was really my passion to do this. And then before the book got launched, I went back to the partnership and I said, I can launch the book on my own in the evenings like this, not on work time, and never mention Mosaic or the partnership, or I can spend some of my work time because this ties into exactly what Mosaic is doing to attract and retain people. And if I give talks and events around the country, not only am I talking about helping all foreign-born people, but they'll hear about St. Louis. And this is a halo to St. Louis. Even if the partnership didn't spend any time or money, if I talk about it and say we have great examples, that can be important. And so I actually have an agreement with the partnership that I can spend a little of my work time because this is about all of you. It's about all of us. And if I can tell the story, and some of the panelists here and contributors talk about this book as the only book that's available, then we are helping people be better served, and we're also shining a good halo on St. Louis. And so that is really what was important to me. I will also say, I never thought when I started writing this in March to launch in September, I had two thoughts in my mind. One, I was just vaccinated, so I thought COVID would be going down and we would be back to work. And secondly, I thought we have a new president, we'll have more immigration again, compared to the prior 4 years, which were so restrictive. So my goal in March was to launch the book in September. Then we had the Afghanistan situation. So not only do we have people in our Hispanic community, our Asian community, our Mideastern community, our Syrians, all these other people who are looking for jobs or trying to get advanced, but now we have people from Afghanistan. And I see Carlos Suarez on the phone, on the call, and Carlos has a new position as the command control at the International Institute to help navigate all the things going on in the community. And workforce and helping people find jobs is going to be one of those. And so I'm so excited that Carlos is there, because we all, not only do each of you want to advance your career, but we want to help others who are new to the community advance their career. So I have donated the book at my expense, as many copies as needed to help with the Afghan people that are coming to get a job. So the way the book is structured is, the beginning, it talks about the stresses. The first phase is all about the stresses that foreign-born people go through. Visas, your family is around the world. Your family in St. Louis doesn't understand that someone tells you they're going to get back to you, but they don't. Or you get a call about an interview, or they don't call you back. So the first area is about stress. The second stage in the book is really about, how do you prepare? Do you have a CV, a resume? What do you need to do? Then I talk about the interviewing process. In the United States, do you need an Americanized nickname? And this is something that both foreign-born people and various ethnic minority people need to think about, is using a nickname. And I discuss in the book the pros and cons of having an American nickname. And I really do address it. It's not a given that everyone needs an American nickname, but I do discuss why having a name that makes it easy for Betsy to walk into Tony's office and introduce you. If I can't say your name, I'm not as likely to want to do this and introduce you. And also, I have references in the book about the bias that people have against names. And there's a lot of research that's been done. And so the question is, I want people to understand that and make the right decision. I talk about job offers. In some of the home countries that people in our community are from, you can't negotiate a job offer. So in the book, I talk about, any of you in this audience, if you're looking to get a job offer from a new company, can you negotiate? And I give you the exact words in the book about how do you go back to your hiring manager? How do you do it in a nice way? How do you put some other things there so that maybe the job offer is sweetened a bit? And I talk about things you might want to sweeten it on, and how do you do that? So that's important. And then I talk about advancing. How do you advance? And Mauricio is at Nestle, and we know big companies, small companies, there's a lot of good advice in this book about how do you advance in a company? How do you network? How do you use LinkedIn? How do you broaden your relationships? So much of finding a job and advancing is about relationships and going beyond your own network, broadening that network. So if you are Hispanic, are all your contacts in the Hispanic community? How do you build those allies across the community? How do you have a bigger network? So if you decide you want to interview for a job at Caleres, you go online, you use LinkedIn, and you say, oh, I know someone at Caleres. I know Amy Hunter, or I know a different person there. And then you can get insight and they can help you. The back of the book has special chapters on refugees looking for jobs, international students, and how they can use their OPT and their OPT STEM. Also, there's advanced networking. So there's advanced networking advice that is in the book that Ram Lakshmanan has given, Suzanne Evans. Someone needs to be muted, please. Thank you. And so that's the flow of the book. And I'm in dialogue with so many people who respond to me now and say, this really helped me. And it's so heartwarming to me. One woman wrote me last week and she said, Betsy, I'm on stage 2 of your book, and I'm not going to read any further until I do everything that you've told me in stage 2. I don't want to read any further. And I'm like, it gives me the chills that someone is really taking the advice to heart. And another woman wrote me last week that she was crying in the first part of my book because when I described the stresses, she said, I really understand what she is going through. So, that's a little bit about why I wrote the book. I do refer to the fact that we have to help our African American communities, in addition to the fact that we have our foreign-born community. And I also discuss our Puerto Rican communities because our Puerto Rican communities are American citizens. So they're not technically foreign-born, but some of the advice in here, because of their backgrounds, may be especially useful to them as well. So I tried to bring up all the kinds of places that this could be a good way to get some new advice and knowledge and to share it. So those are some of the reasons why it was my personal passion and feeling of my purpose in life to do this and to bring this message in a broader way. So I'm so appreciative of this chance to tell you about why I wrote a book. And then I said, let me introduce you to 3 people who are part of this journey with me. And I'm going to have them talk about the job search process and how can foreign-born people, whether it's a newcomer, such as maybe someone that Carlos is going to be working with at the International Institute, or some of you that have been here for many years, what are some of the things that my panelists can tell you about a job search? The 3 panelists that we invited, the first one is Nalini Mahadevan, who is an immigration lawyer. She's an immigrant herself, which she discusses when she writes in the book with me, originally from India. And she has a big practice, including immigration law. And she works a lot when we refer individuals or universities or businesses that need a quick question or something that they just don't even know where to start. We refer people to a number of different immigration lawyers, but Nalini is one that always is prompt in responding and helps us help other people. So I'm very, very happy to have Nalini here. Susan Gobo is known to many of you. She was an honoree. She and Mauricio, I know, were honored at your recent dinner. Susan was a physical therapist in her original country of Brazil. And when she came in her travels as a accompanying spouse with Mauricio, she found in this country she couldn't get credentialed to do the work she'd trained to do. And she truly understands the pressures and the stresses of having a profession, but not being able to do it, and accompanying your spouse or your partner, and then helping other women through her networking, which she'll talk about, as they broaden their networks, which helps them in their personal life. And it also often helps them in their work because they start to broaden their networks. And my third panelist is Shirley Moran. And Shirley will tell you a little bit about her story later. But Shirley is an example of someone who came here with a spouse and originally from Mexico. Am I right? Mexico, yes. And brought high-level kind of marketing and advertising skills. And that was my background. And so I particularly related to Shirley. But good stories about how she used some of the programs of the Mosaic Project and others to network, and what that meant in terms of her career and how she has landed on her feet and then helped others in our St. Louis community. So thank you for the 3 of you to join me. And I shared some questions and I'm going to ask them. And if you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat and we will get to them as well. And I'm just thrilled. And I guess my point is that we want to have fun tonight. I want people to be honest and real. And it's a hard question. I do think particularly as we're entering 2022, there is so much hiring going on. There are so many jobs that are being posted and it's changing. Remote work, hiring, how do you interview, how fast you need to respond if you have candidates. So there's a lot going on that's new and different, and it's an exciting time if you are looking to find a job or to move up in your organization, or if you're advising someone. So I think you should be listening with all those things in mind: a family member, a colleague, your own personal situation. What can you take away today that's going to help you as we get into 2022, which is going to be a really new and exciting year? So my first question, and I'm going to start with Shirley, is what do you see as the biggest 2 challenges for someone looking for a job right now?
So right now, I think the biggest challenge is making I think building rapport whenever you're interviewing or whenever you're meeting new people, it's something that it's instrumental in getting to know and showcasing your talents and showcasing your experience and your drive and your will and all of the things that are part of your personality. And it's just very hard to come across interviews or networking events on Zoom where the amount of time you can talk, it's little, the amount of participation is little too. And people are often at home, distracted. There's so much going on. So I think one of the main challenges right now, it's writing a specific and strong elevator pitch, knowing what are your strengths and making sure in a very easy, fast, direct way, you make a good case of yourself and make justice to your talents and your background.
I think that's a good example. And I think people really need to find a way to differentiate themselves and to make their case. And it's easier in person. One of the things I talk about in the book is how can you do some show and tell? How can you demonstrate and show some examples of things? So tell a little bit about your own case situation, about what happened with you and how your career has progressed. And then we'll move along to the others.
Yeah, and I think part of it, I also wanted to touch on what are the challenges a newcomer as of just whenever you're looking for a job. I moved here, as you said, 3.5 years ago, and it was very shocking for me because I never conducted business in English in my country, and I didn't know anything about the workplace in the US. So I think I thought about 3 main challenges that I had whenever I moved, because I couldn't narrow it down. Those 3 were very big. I think one, it's understanding the industry. Once you move to a new country, you don't know who are the big players or where are the industries that you could fit or apply for a job. You just come, you know what your skills, and there's not a place rather than just talking to people. What are the big players for this industry in St. Louis or in wherever you go? What are good places to work? What are places that everybody knows in the community or the industry that are toxic? So understanding what the industry is and where you would like to apply and land a job. So that would be my number 1. My number 2 it's definitely understanding the application process. And as you mentioned in your book, Betsy, from how people, like what you said, like resumes or CVs, like in Mexico, every single CV has a photo. And if you send your CV here with a photo of yourself, like that's a no-go right away. So understanding how to arrange your resume, make sure you know how to apply, who to send a note before you apply, how to connect on LinkedIn, how to know after an interview, send thank you emails or notes right away. So all of that process, it's a different cultural process that no one will tell you about. And there's no way you can learn without a mentor or someone by your side coaching you on that part. And the last one is networking. I used to have a big network, just group of people that would have my back. And whenever I moved here, no one knew anything about me. Even from a reference standpoint, I can say give references like my friends or people I've worked in Mexico because of the barrier, the language was a barrier. So you really need to get yourself ready to have 1, 2, or 3 people that even if you haven't worked, that know you and that can back up whoever you're saying you are.
Good point. So Susan, what would you say? You've now worked with so many international women, and again, I would say, what would you say are the biggest challenges for someone looking for a job, since you have had personal barriers as well as you've now worked with hundreds? How many are the International Spouse Group has? What, 600 now?
We have 613 members in the International Spouse Meetup Group from 82 different countries, and we have 370 in the International Mentoring Program. So we are growing very fast, we're very successful, very happy with this result. But talking about challenges, and So I agree with Shirley about everything she talked about the interview and everything, like understanding the interview, since the beginning, the process of getting a job, everything. But as I talked to these members of our groups and the newcomers, so they step before it's about the work permit. So nowadays they come over here, how can I have this work permit? So it's being a very difficult situation now, because before they would wait for 4 months, 6 months, but nowadays we see more than a year to have the permission to work. And I'm talking about L2 because most of them come over here as a spouse, and so they are dependent of the L1. And so if they have to wait more than a year to have this permission to work, then they are going to start the process to apply for getting a job and everything. So if they think about that, they say, wow, you know, I'm gonna lose the momentum, or if they see a job posting, this is the right job for me, but I cannot apply. So who knows if this job will be available next year when I have my permission to work. And also people who come over here, like I came with H4, and H4, it's even harder because most of them are not allowed to work. So it's very frustrating, you know, you have to wait until you have your green card to start working. So how to manage this in between this? So my advice is always, you know, try to volunteer to be part of the board so you can improve your skills, and you can network, you can connect with people, and also understand the American way of working, the environment. And I think that's something. And another problem that I see is the credential. Again, it was my case, my situation, but Annie and I, we interview every mentee who comes to the mentoring program, and every time. So this past 2 months, we had like a lot of doctors, people in this healthcare area. So it's very hard for them to start the process, to have their credential, and also the not being certain about how much time you stay here in the United States. We came here with the assignment 2 years, 3 years. So how I'm going to apply for have a credential, and I don't know if I will stay 1 year or 2 years here. So it's very hard to manage that too. So we have seen people who came here as a spouse, and we could not keep this family because the woman could not have a job. It was very hard, and they decided to return to their countries.
We also have situations where people move to other states because some of our licenses for jobs are state
Yes.
dependent. And for example, the International Institute had Bosnian dentists, and they could not sit for a dental exam in our state, so that the family moved to another state where they could.
Yeah.
So there are a number of restrictions and things that tend to be protective for the people who live here, but then become a barrier for us when we try to attract and retain foreign-born people who move here, where they can't necessarily do the work that they were trained to do. So some things are federal, some things are state. Why don't you just say a little bit about the emotions of people who have to get delayed in what they're trying to do in terms of getting into the job market?
Sorry, is it for me, Betsy?
Yeah, what are the emotions of these people who have to wait?
It's very hard, you know, because there are another barriers. It's not just job. So especially nowadays, you know, you are far from your family, the pandemic, many people they lost family members. So they are here and you start thinking, you know, I cannot have a job and I don't know how much time I will stay here. And so there's a lot of anxiety in this situation right now. So we have to be very caring and empathetic with these people now, and very sensitive because a lot of things going on. So
And I think that's true in the workplace in general. We all have to have more sensitivity to the situations. I think our foreign-born community, no matter how many years they've lived here, if they have family members that are outside the United States, those family members are further away. There's different worries because the vaccinations may or may not be as prevalent. And something also that I've learned, particularly with our newer refugees that are coming, this is something that was new and interesting to me, is when people used to move to the United States, to St. Louis, they started their lives new, and they weren't in touch so much. I mean, they would write or they would call, but right now, because of video and our phones, people are being re-traumatized daily. And so even if you've lived here a long time, if you have family around the world that is in crisis, you are dealing with it in a real moment time. And that makes it very hard to do your work and also in terms of what we do. So I just think that the sensitivity is really important.
Yeah.
So Nalini, you deal with individuals, you deal with organizations that are helping people work. You know, what are you seeing right now is the biggest challenge for people as we're in 2021 coming into 2022?
I think Shirley and Susan actually, and even you touched on a lot of things that are really, I mean, it's not just the visa situation, it's also your whole life. You've uprooted yourself completely. Your entire support structure is gone. So now you're dependent on the, on the kindness of strangers to help you navigate this life. And you don't even know the maze. You don't even know the maze. You don't even know where are you going to get stopped. So first it all, okay, as a spouse, perhaps you have a dependent visa and actually you have a way of being in this country. You may not be able to work. So you've given up your entire career. So you're just like this person who's now sitting at home, unable to be all that you could be, that you were back in your home country. Okay, that's one. The second thing is, like Susan said about the work situation. If you're the primary breadwinner, that can be very, very stressful. Right now, for instance, suppose, I mean, we deal with students from universities who are waiting for an H-1B visa. So now if you're a STEM student, you probably have 3 bites at the apple, as everybody knows, because guess what? You can have a work situation, an OPT for optional practical training for 3 years. And you can renew that, a couple of times and then try to get an H-1B in the lottery system where there are only 65,000 visas. So if you're fortunate to get in, yes, and the secondly get approved, then fantastic. Otherwise, you'll go back to the drawing board. Now, I mean, I came from another country and we spoke English. We all spoke English, believe me, but we spoke it so differently. My husband is a PhD in light metals. We didn't call it light metals. We said aluminium. If I said aluminium here, people will say, "What the heck is that?" just little challenges like that. So in a work situation, it's your accent, the way you pronounce words, the emphasis on the emphasis here in this country is on the first vowel, whereas overseas it can be on several different other, totally different way of saying the exact same word. So I mean, then talking about L visas, we had 2 spouses here on L visas, and they both taught in metrics. And here I'm saying, you are in the United States, you now need to start thinking, we have this discussion every day. She'll come in and tell me it's in centigrades, what it is in centigrades. And so in a work situation, I think you need not only to be able to qualify for the job, but you also need an empathetic employer. because that's the place where you're going to be spending a majority of your time. For licensed professions, I was a lawyer overseas. I could not be licensed in this country unless I went to New York to get licensed. And then if I was living in Missouri, I would always be a foreign lawyer in Missouri. I mean, it just, so I had to go back to law school. So basically, you have to be prepared to go back to school. As an adult, go back to school. That's one thing. Medical professions are highly impacted. The lawyers, doctors, dentists, teachers, physical therapists, anybody who has a license. And like you said, Betsy, state to state, federal is different. Overseas, most systems licensing systems are federal. In the United States, it's all state. So that's an orientation you have to understand. So several difficulties. First, actually getting a visa to work. You may have a visa, but you may not be able to work. That's situation number one. Situation number two, the work culture. We were at the Getty's Museum and in LA, and we went on this architectural tour, and the stones in the patio are 3 feet wide. And so the architectural historian tells us the reason they are like that is that because in this country, we like to keep a social distance of 3 feet between people. This is not true in foreign cultures. So I will have people coming up. I've now become so Americanized. I have to kind of start thinking, what was it like before? And then people come up right up to you and talk to you. And it's like, whoa, no. I need to step back 2 feet to be able to have this conversation. So there are things like that. And these all things can be misconstrued. Gender, talking to other genders at the workplace. Some people are comfortable. Some cultures are not comfortable with that. So, I mean, when you talk about emotions, we manage a lot of emotions now when we do visas for people, because people come here and they're not able to work for more than a year while they're waiting for the work permit. And they will call us up with utter frustration. Why? What happened? And most of the time, our time is spent actually holding their hand more than actually doing the work of the visa, because the visa work is done. It's the waiting that is really, really very, very difficult, very difficult.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially for working people, very difficult. Not used to being at home, not used to being a non-earning spouse, not used to being, so many of those things. It's hard.
Let's talk a bit about the process. So people who are here, who have lived here, who are authorized to work, when you have to network and use LinkedIn and make relationships and leverage that with your communication skills, your work skills, how do you show those skills? How do you build those bridges? And Shirley, I'm going to let you talk about that first. How do you do those connections?
Well, I can talk about my experience, and my experience was definitely through, and Nalini, I was a year, for a full year without being able to drive or work or do anything. So I totally hear what you're saying. And I think just being, you don't know who's gonna ever lend you a hand. Sometimes people that you met in passing are the ones that call you back and offer you a job. I think being mindful of, first in St. Louis, everyone knows each other. I think for people that come from a little bigger cities, this is very surprising, and it's very weird because we're not used to just being nice to everybody, right? So here, please be nice to everybody, because you never know who's connected to who. So that's a smaller city advice. And definitely always put your and I'm back to the elevator pitch, but even if you're in a meeting, like in a lunch or coffee or in a family outing, be prepared to sell yourself, because you don't have that network. And every new person you talk to, it's a person that will be that might be able to help you and lend you a hand or introduce you to someone else. So I think that's something that it's really great for I don't know if it's a St. Louis thing, but the people that I have met, whenever I was looking for a job, each one of them introduced me to three more people. So that's how I started building my network. They liked, I think, and talking a little bit, Betsy, about what are the soft skills. I don't know if I can talk about this now, or do
Yeah,
you
talk
want?
about the soft skills.
Okay. I think for me, things that that I was asked during interviews, it's how does your skills translate to the US? So I think having a very clear understanding of what are your strengths and how those translate into the workplace and how those translate into any workplace, it's key, because that's what people are looking for. And the three main I think soft skills are for sure the main, for me, the most important things. People can learn almost anything, but you cannot change the kind of person you are. So soft skills are very, very hard to teach or to learn. So my three most important skills, the things that I think employers are looking for, is number one, adaptability. The workplace changes fast. New projects come, new clients come, new managers, moving from one team to another, from one project to another. People want to know that you're adaptable, that if something new comes to you, you'll embrace it, you'll be happy to work on it, and you'll be ready for change. So I think as an immigrant, we're so adaptable because we just left all of our cultures behind, all our languages, our family. Like that is the biggest example of adaptability, and that's one of the skills employers are most looking for. So use that as a strength. Talk about your experience, about how adaptable you are, and how you were able to just move to a new country. And self-management. Know that managers want to know that they won't have to hold your hand every day, every time, not because you're from a different culture means you're stupid or you don't understand how to do things. On the other hand, I think immigrants are very much used to power through very difficult situations. So that's it speaks a little bit about self-management and being able to understand what your goals are and just work through them without anyone behind you telling you what to do. And the third one definitely is drive. And I think every employer wants to know that you're not only applying for that job, but if the opportunity comes and if things happen, you'll be able to grow within your role and grow within the organization. Our companies and organizations spend a ton of money bringing new talent, interviewing, learning curve, selecting candidates. As a candidate, you need to interview sometimes 2 or 3 months or 4 months to get a job. So all of that time, it's money, money, money. And they want to know that if they hire you, you'll be able to grow and they can trust that you'll stick around to the company. So I think drive and loyalty are two others. So that's it.
Yeah, and you talk about 2 or 3 months. I think what I'm hearing right now is that the cycle is even getting much faster. That as an employer, you're going to have to move faster if you want to get Shirley or someone else, that you can't take 2 or 3 months. Everything is moving faster right now. So I think that's going to be interesting too. Susan, what do you think? What do you think are the most important technical or soft skills that are needed for all of us that are looking for jobs right now that come from a different ethnicity, that may have a background that is not mainstream? What do you think are those important technical or soft skills?
Well, soft skills, right? As you said, power
Skills.
Yeah, nowadays it's seen as very important. And as Shirley said, the number one, adaptability, I think it's very important. And also resilience, to show that you can adapt, you can cope with the stress, and you can come with different results from different situations, and not just for yourself, but for the team, like watching about your emotions and pay attention on somebody's emotion. So this empathy again, emotional intelligence, how to deal with this situation, I think that's important. And teamwork, collaboration, and it's been very hard we see people talking about, you know, when you are in the office, you are here, you go for a coffee, you talk, or after work, but how to engage this team if one is here, another one, sometimes it's in another city, sometimes, and how, in also people from different cultures working together. So you, again, you have to know how to communicate, because the way I communicate in Brazil, it's different how people communicate here. And some people just arrived here and they didn't have the experience working in American environment, so they don't know. So suddenly they are here in the squares, how I can behave over here. So the way you communicate in this new platform, it's important too, you know. And a lot, and of course, like communicating and technical skills you need for digital. Everything now is online, and you have to learn. If you go to the doctor's office, even the doctor, he has his computer, he has to know how to manage the digital world, and the nurses and the dentists. So you have to get to know these skills as well, computer skills also.
I'm going to build on something Susan said about teamwork versus individual. One of the things that I talk about in the book is that sometimes people from different cultures are talk more about the team and are don't want to brag about for themselves. They're too modest, and in the mainstream American style, you need to also be able to brag a bit about what you did, what you contributed. You want to be a team player, but you also really have to show what you personally did. And if you only talk about the collective good or the process of the team, it's possible that the hiring manager or the HR people aren't going to think that you are really going to be able to do the job. And that comes through. I talk about different interview styles, chronological versus behavioral, but it's something to really culturally understanding what your own ethnicity is and what that means in terms of how you talk about your own achievements versus group achievements, and if that's going to be perceived well by Betsy or Karen or someone else who's interviewing you here, so that you learn what you need to stress. So I think that that's something important. Nalini, what do you think about the skills, the soft skills, the communicating skills?
I think as an immigration attorney, I'm more, if I need to get somebody qualified, I'm more focused on the technical skills, because that's what gets you through the door. And what I'm very happy to say is that in the past, while I saw some hesitancy on the part of employers to employ immigrants or people who need a visa, now there seems to be less hesitancy as the available pool of willing and able workers is drying up. And there are so many more vacancies. So employers are taking a little more, going out and putting themselves a little more and talking about hiring people from overseas. We're doing everything from golf professionals to PhDs in mechanical engineering from Australia. I mean, we are just doing the gamut. Talking about soft skills. So I had a lady who was of Chinese origin, lived in Australia, did her PhD in mechanical engineering from Australia, and super smart woman. But I think in our cultures, as a woman from another country, we are taught not to talk about, women are not supposed to talk about how fantastic they are. I mean, time and time again, as a woman, you're told, it doesn't look good on you to talk about yourself like that. So what happens is when you bring that feeling over here, it reflects on your resume as such. You're not, so you don't want to really tell. So the reason I bring up this lady is that I had a really hard time pulling out all the information she had. I said, if we have to get you qualified, I want the application to go through Zip. So if I'm going to do that, I need everything you have. So I can say you are the best candidate for this job. There's nobody else like you. You are the bee's knees and the cat's whiskers. I need to be able to say that. right? So I think that is probably a soft skill and a technical skill that people need to bring to the table very, very much. Like you said, showcase what you can do. And if there is some project, even if you're a PhD candidate or a MS candidate, and that's some project you've worked on, bring that project to the table and show that. I mean, bring that dissertation, that paper, that whatever it is, send it ahead of time.
Yeah.
Maybe send it in the morning so that that's the first email that person sees in the morning. Make Outlook work so that it delivers to that person 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe. I don't know. These are all things that I think, we learn. So the other very interesting thing I'm seeing now is people on visas jumping from job to job. There is so much demand for technical people that I have people calling me every day. They are juggling 3 job offers, and they're saying, now, if I take job with the employer A, and actually my employer B is in the process of giving me a job, and yesterday employer C called me with an even better job offer, and actually C doesn't want me to move, and A and B want me to move, what should I do? This is an absolutely exciting thing for us. So totally exciting that your skills are being finally recognized as, being very important to the economy here. And I think finally, I think I have to say that when you're researching the job as an immigrant coming in, and this is actually, I guess, true for anybody. If I'm a new worker in a company, the more people support me, the more successful I'm going to be. I mean, and as immigrant, actually need this support structure even more. So if there is a company in which there's a mentor or person who's come up the ladder, just like you, maybe you want to, look for that person, maybe like you said, research that company on LinkedIn, research all the people on LinkedIn, reach out to a couple of them. I'm sure if you could reach out to me, I'd be very happy to tell you my story. I mean, we all here, I'm sure Susan and Shirley are also wanting to tell their story, just like you, Betsy, you tell us a story. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's human nature. So I think that's my 2 cents.
Those are good. Those are good ones. I do want to take one of the questions that Nancy Spargo, who's in the healthcare field, has asked about, is there a directory about the types of licenses or credentials that could be used, or some type of reference to know how credentials translate? One of the sections in the book was written by World Education Services, and they do credential evaluations to say that this degree from this country is equivalent to this degree here. So there are ways to get credentials reviewed. And some of those credentials are reviewed when you have technical documents. Some of the time with refugees, there are other ways to have credentials reviewed if they don't have their paperwork, because sometimes the paperwork isn't available, or it was a while ago that you left the country. So there are different ways that this can happen. But the other area is Upwardly Global. It's an organization that helps people find jobs, and they have certain they have some career guides for certain careers, which talks about pathways that you can take. In certain states, like Illinois has some job guides. So there are ways that you can understand what it translates to. But the other thing that's actually almost more important is sometimes people have to understand the pathway that they will get on. And I see someone on this call who's in the healthcare field who may need to take a different pathway because they won't be able to do the original job that they had. In the same way that the International Institute guides people, and maybe new people that are newcomers coming, that they may have to stair step their way back into their career. So they may not have an exact credential translation, which is very frustrating, but it will be the process over time that will happen. I also want to mention that Mauricio was asking about different specific characteristics. And again, I think some of those are stereotypes. Sometimes stereotypes are true. Sometimes stereotypes are not true. There's a reason that stereotypes are stereotypes, but you don't want to assume that those are true. So I don't want to make those assumptions, but I think trying to understand the culture that you come from and where it might be an advantage or where it might be something that you need to relearn in a new culture. Just like if I were in Beijing, I would need to relearn things myself. Or if I were in Mexico City, I would need to learn that I could stand closer and I could hug more. And this, I would have to relearn. So I don't know if I would say it's, but what I've seen, which is what I've said often, women, as Nalini said, women often underplay their skills, and because they're trying to be modest, or they've been encouraged to be modest, and they need to find a way to get that voice right and to practice with a friend so that they can't sound not genuine, or they don't want to sound braggy or boastful or too big for their britches, but they also don't want to be so humble that they're not taken as seriously as they demand to be taken. So I think finding the right voice is really important. And I think that's, you have to have practice, and that's where you need to, get advice from, me, from Shirley, from Susan, from Lily. So how do I put this? And how do I say it in a way that's strong and confident and true to myself, but also doesn't make me sound like I'm arrogant or going to be hard to work with? So I think that is true. I want to ask you is a question of, what do you think is something that is a workplace culture difference? And it goes a little bit to your point, Mauricio, of differences, but what would be an example of a workplace culture difference that you might see? And Nalini, what would you say from the, for people that come from an Indian background, what would be a different workplace culture than what we see here?
I think addressing people. Here, I mean, to address somebody by their first name doesn't necessarily mean they're being disrespectful. But if you're from overseas, some people, I mean, there was one employee we had who persisted in calling me ma'am, and it made me so uncomfortable. But I understood where they came from, and it's just things like that. It's okay to call people by their first name. That doesn't mean you disrespect them, but I mean, and you can be as respectful as you can, even while you're doing that. I think the other thing is, I always stress personal hygiene is very important. In the United States, we have huge emphasis on that, and so that's it's not talked about enough. I think should be talked about very much more.
Actually, as I was writing this book, there were certain things that I thought I wrote down, and I said, I don't know that I can write that. And then I said, should I say, one of the things I say in the book is,
Yeah.
if you're interviewing in person, be sure the day that you interview that you shower and you don't smoke. I mean, and I almost took it out, but then I left it in, because I really feel like if I don't say that,
Yes.
that I'm not helping somebody who maybe would say, I just didn't think about that, because there's a bias here about, hygiene.
Yes.
And a bias against smoking in many workplaces. And so I felt like, I understand the culture. I mean, Nestle had a culture where a lot of people would smoke internationally, but here it doesn't play well. So to your point, understanding the culture. Susan, what would you say would be a difference from the workplace culture that you experienced in the healthcare community, maybe physical therapy, between there and here?
Okay, so I think I'm gonna talk about Brazil, but I think it's very similar to other Latin American countries. But we see in Brazil, the personal and the professional life is very connected. So you make really close friends in your work, and that's a good thing, but it's challenging as well, because if there's something in your relationship outside of the work, it can affect your relationship at work. So it's very tricky. And the communication style here, it's more direct. And in Brazil, it's like you come with the broad idea and then you go to the details. So you go around. And now that I live here for so long, I see when Brazilians come, they start talking, and it's like, okay, come on, what do you want?
Yes.
So, yeah, because they stay like, and that's true for the emails as well. You read the whole email in the end, you say, oh, I'd like to ask you, blah, 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 on the phone. So it's for somebody who is not Brazilian, it's like, it doesn't make sense. And another big difference, I think it's the large power distance. So we have a very strong hierarchy. So we praise to have like, you have to respect the levels, the ranks. So you have to, so if you are in the same rank, it's very informal environment, but if you talk to someone in a bigger rank, you have to be very, very respectful, not saying nicknames or anything. We'll never say Betsy, Bob, or something like that. You have to say the whole name. And relationships are very important. So if you are doing some business with Brazil, you have to make sure to send the same person to do the job, because it's not a relationship between the organizations, it's about the person. So you have to build this relationship to have the trust. So sometimes I say, send the same person, otherwise the business is gonna take time.
Any question about, there's a question here about greetings. Any special how you greet people?
Yeah, so we hug, we like to touch people. We hug people, even if we're at work, you kiss, and we come and stay with the hand talking. Maurice still has this habit, I have to remind him. In the meetings, it's very, if you come from outside, it's like a chaos, because there's a person talking in a parallel conversation, and people, they interrupt. And so if you are from another country, it's like how people, they understand each other here in this meeting, because looks like they are not paying attention, but we are listening there and talking here. So it's
Okay.
very interesting.
Shirley, what would you say? It's, coming from Mexico, in St. Louis, our #1 foreign-born group right now is our Indian community, is #1. Mexico is #2. China is #3. Bosnia is #4. So Mexico, tell us, what is a workplace culture difference for those of us that when we come across community here, people that are coming from Mexico that we may interact with in our workplaces? What's different?
So two main things that standed out right away for me. The first one was just like the culture of productivity, nonstop. Like just how well I work at an agency, so it's like lawyers. You have to report in incrementals of 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 20, 75.
Allocated to a client tracking your time all the time.
All my day, like all of the day, I need to tell what I was doing in each 15 minutes of my day. So it's, whereas in other jobs in Mexico, I never ever did this before. So just taking, and that amount of time it's going to get billed to the client. So it's not only, oh, I'm reporting how much time I'm using. This is going to cost someone else. So I need to be productive. I cannot just sit here and think about how I want to make this report. I need to come prepared and in the mindset to do things, because it's not only like that, it's the beginning of how people think. And you see, like whenever people block time on their calendars, I'm blocking 1 hour to get this task done. And you need to get that task done in that specific hour. So I don't think in the Latino, or at least in Mexican culture, where our brains are wired that way at all. On just, I have this amount of time and it's limited and I need to make the most out of it. So it's always going. And that's how, like, that's the expectation from your clients, from your boss. Their deadlines are way shorter because you need to be productive, and
Good
that's
point.
what you're hired for.
Good point. You're going to get one final quick question to respond to, and then we'll take some questions and turn it back to Tony. Your final question is, what is your best piece of advice about being innovative in the job search for 2022? What's your best piece of advice about how anyone on this call listening to be innovative, or recommending to people that are job hunting? How can you be innovative in 2022? Susan, what do you think?
I was in the meeting yesterday, and I saw the panel, Betsy, that you were there, and I thought it was very interesting. They shared going to the company that you want to work and see the culture of this company and the values. And so, and you see if you have this aligned to you, so you don't waste time. If you see that's, you know, that's not for me, that's just move on, go to another company or another
It's
job.
two-way. It's not just the employer trying to hire you. It's you deciding where it's a good
Yes,
fit.
yes.
You have to decide what's going to be a good fit for you.
Yeah, I think.
And in today's world, you have to do that quickly. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it was a good advice.
Good
And
point.
networking, always being part
Always,
of different
always.
groups, organizations like the Hispanic Leaders Group, be part of Mosaic Chambers of Commerce, you know, Asian, Hispanic, African Chamber. So be part of the International Spouse Group in the mentoring program, because you are going to get more connections, and the mentors, they are locals, so they know a lot about St. Louis, about the community. They can open doors for you and give a lot of good advice as well.
Good point. Nalini, what do you think? What's your best innovative advice for 2022 for people advancing in their workplace?
I think a couple of things. See what your skill level is and what your salary level is, and a good way to go find these things out, of course, is on the internet. Is fantastic, but I would highly recommend going to Indeed and ZipRecruiter and salary.com and Monster and all those other places, recruiting places, and looking at specifically what educational skills they're asking for and what they're paying for those educational skills.
So know your
And then
worth.
they always tell you the benefits. So if you do even a very quick survey of this, you get a very good idea of where you are in the marketplace, how you can be useful to an employer, and how that will translate for immigration. Because I'm an immigration attorney, so for me, everything is with that lens in mind.
Yeah,
is that
good point.
how do I translate this to the government? So some guy, a government has never been an employer in their lives, is now trying to judge you on your skills.
Shirley, what would you say? What's your one piece of advice?
If you're wanting to apply for jobs, prepare yourself for every interview as if it was the last interview of the last process in your favorite company. I don't think, and this is just a cultural thing too, in Mexico, we don't prepare for, well, at least I've never prepared for an interview, and here there's so many questions and you always need to be over prepared. So never stop preparing for interviews. Even if you're at a job, understand what your strengths are and what skills that you're doing right now in your current job are going to be the best to sell you for your next job.
Great advice. There is one question from Jeffrey about what are employers doing to help their staff overcome unconscious bias? I do think, unconscious bias is unconscious. It's hard. Employers, those that are committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and we were talking yesterday with Wale Salud at Centene, there are, companies that are really trying to teach their leaders about unconscious bias and how to try to not make biased decisions that they are not understanding. There are some companies now that are doing interviews that don't have the names on the top when they review them to try to eliminate the unconscious bias. But then once people obviously walk in the room, you have biases of names and cultures and height and anything. So it's very challenging. And Jeff, I think it's a challenge because we all have unconscious bias. And so training so that we start to learn, but you have to have people willing to train, and you have to have people willing to learn about the biases that we each hold so that we do a better job. And we try to, encourage others to have a better insight. Karen's done a lot of training on bias, whether it's religious bias, whether it's ethnic bias, and it's really difficult. It takes professional training. It takes people willing to learn. And it takes cultures that value that. So again, Karen, if you have another point on that, I'd welcome it. Any final question? Karen, you have a point about unconscious bias that you would add?
I think that the work that you've been doing is heroic. And when you look at the World Trade Center and the Mosaic Project and and the Institute and all the folks who are doing warm and welcoming from an immigrant perspective, that needs to fan out. It just needs to spread, because the more folks that engage with folks who might have a different accent than they do, who have a different immigrant experience than they might have, or any immigrant experience that they don't have, that's going to reduce the bias. I mean, that's why I just think there is some innovation that could happen in this region over the next few years to really expand the ability of, and I apologize because I feel somewhat it's going to end up on the shoulders of the immigrant and refugee community, and that's a burden that they shouldn't have. And yet tonight's presentation has been such a wonderful example of why people can be so effective at minimizing that bias by just being out and being heard. And we need to figure out how to do more of that.
And we have to do it across all the peoples of the region.
You
and
bet.
Get to know the stories, get to know the people, because once you know Shirley's story, you know, you say Shirley is amazing. And so you just have to learn the stories and get to know people and know more people that don't come from where you come from. Tony, I'm going to turn it back to you, and maybe you have a final comment or a thought on this.
Before that, I do have a question that has been posted, and that is they wanted to know if there was a best platform or process to share the information within our communities.
And that's how it relates to
Yeah.
companies calling or contacting Hispanic organizations in the area and saying that they have job openings.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go any further than that, because what will happen is that organization its mission is not to find jobs or to develop jobs. They get that information, they want to help their community, and then we try to post it on Facebook, or try to post it, send it to people that we know, or try to find a way to do it on our website without interrupting what our website is supposed to be all about. So we're just wondering if there is a platform where we can continue to funnel those kinds of information. For example, I got a call from the Coca-Cola warehouse in St. Charles. They had some openings.
Right.
I got that. I posted it, but where else can it go?
I know. So we're getting a lot of calls from employers, and I tell them several things. I say, obviously, the Mosaic Project, we post jobs. The chambers post jobs. Diversity Awareness Partnership, Focus St. Louis. But what I tell them, what's more important, joining the chambers and having someone from the organization who goes and forms relationships. Sending $100 to be a member doesn't do it. But you need people in your organization who meet people in those organizations so they have a trusted person that they know.
Correct.
So
to do the
that's
networking.
correct.
Do
I
the
tell them,
footwork.
go to the events, meet the people, and have someone who cares to be that connection point. It takes more.
Yeah, and that brings to the next question, Maria, that I was going to ask is, what are corporations doing to address the foreign-born job hunter? How does it occur? And I haven't read your book, so I apologize.
It's at the library. You can get it from the library. The libraries have it.
Thank you. And I had some events in my life where the last month and a half has not been community work at all, basically. But my question would be do you think that some of the corporations are doing something actively to address the foreign-born job hunter?
I think that's when some of them are interested in reading the book to see what it is that they're not doing, the barriers that they don't even know that they have. And I think those that are working with their employee resource groups, their business resource group, ERG, BRGs, are going to start to hear from it. Like Emerson just started their new SOMOS group for Hispanics. So that group is going to be empowered to explain to those leaders at Emerson why they're not getting as many applicants and how to do it better. So you've got the internal champions meeting the need that they have for talent at all skill levels. They need more. These employers want to be a preferred employer. They want a more diverse applicant pool. But after that, you need to then get into the fabric of the company and work inside and then work from the outside. So I see both of those things happening. And I think that because there's such a need for talent, people are going to get more real about it. Thank you for this opportunity, Tony.
Are
Thank you.
paper
Thank you
resumes
so much.
still important?
Is
Say
a
that
paper
again.
resume? The resume is important. I don't know if I'd say paper, and LinkedIn is even, you need a resume. But your LinkedIn profile is even more important because people then refer you, they look at that, they connect with you, they see you there. And that's what I'm referring people to when I say, oh, you need to know about Susan Gobo. I send them to her LinkedIn because a resume may or may not get there. But when you apply to that specific job, yes, you need that resume, and you need the cover letter that's probably attached in the same document so that the cover letter and the resume get loaded up together and they get your cover letter about why you would be wonderful. At the same time, hopefully you've talked to someone in the company who's also telling the HR people why they should interview you, and that maybe you're reaching out to someone who's in their employee resource group who's putting in a good word for you, and you're letting me know. So I write to the HR person and say, make sure you look at that resume. So you get everybody looking that they want you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We only have like
Yep.
4 to 5 minutes left. So I want to thank Betsy and the panelists for tonight, for giving their time and talent on our meeting. This is one of the things when you ask what the HOG does, this is one of the things that we do since we don't do direct services, we don't have a paid staff, we don't have an office. One of the things we've been doing for the last 30 years is to bring these educational meetings together. Every other month during our membership meetings, we try to bring something very important to the community. It's up to you to take advantage of the networking. It's up to you to contact some of the people that you hear from if you have interest in learning more. To by all means reach out. We're like a great big community here in St. Louis, and St. Louis is very, very good and very welcoming. I think it's also relationship based, like what Susan was saying in Brazil. We have some of that here in St. Louis. I want to thank some of the people whose name I've seen on this call for the first time in terms of names of meeting participant. Annie Shaffley, Jared Heckinson. I know we've met before, but I don't know if he's been to a HOG meeting with us. Jaime Tapia, Nancy Spargo, Olga Belova. I want to thank you all for being on the call with us tonight and learning a little bit about the things that Betsy and also the panelists are doing. They're doing great things in our community. This is called Hispanic Leaders Group because everybody on this call is a leader. And
Jasmine Tapia is our new member that just joined about a week and a half ago, and she
Which
joined
one?
us tonight.
Which
Jasmine
one?
Tapia.
Oh, Jasmine Tapia. Okay. I wrote it down wrong. I wrote it as Jaime.
Hey, Tony, I have
Jasmine.
something very important to say before this meeting is over. One thing that you didn't mention is that we have the board elections to be done, but because you have 7 open positions for the board and 7 nominations, those nominees are going to be approved by acclamation. And it would be good to say who are the names of those people that are going to be approved to be on the board next year. So let me bring those names so we talked about that, okay?
Okay, so I'm going to turn back over and allow Mauricio Gobo to take a few moments on the board election, which happens every December. And this year we have 7 vacancies and we have 7 nominations that were asked by the nomination committee, and the people on the list accepted the nomination. So basically 7 vacancies, 7 board members. So it's done by acclamation. There's no need to vote because there's no competition.
Right.
So Mauricio, can you please let us know who did that?
Yes. So the names of the New board members that we're gonna have next year are, some of them are still in the board and they are just being elected again, okay? So Alexandra Johnson, she's already in the board of the HLG, is gonna keep going there. It's gonna keep, still gonna be in the board. Tony Maldonado, I'm glad about that. Elena Garcia Canyon, she's part of the board nowadays, and she's going to continue to be part of the board. Esmeralda Haron, she's new, so welcome, Esmeralda, if you are still on this call, because you were. Frank Carretero, she was part of the board. She's current on the board, and she's going to be part of the board next year too. Myself. And the last person is Sofia Maris Belém. She's going to be joining the board next year. She's new in the HLG, and she's not here today. She told she couldn't be because of work duties, work matters. So those are the names of the 7 people that are going to be part of the board next year, replacing the 7 positions that were vacant by this December.
Well,
Could I
let's
also-
welcome
could I
them and
also-
acknowledge them.
Could I also, in addition to a shout out to our new and incoming board members, thank Tony and everyone on the board who did such strong work in the past year around making sure that there were masks distributed in the region, that there were vaccination programs in the region, and for all the partnerships with all the different first responders and everybody who was in service delivery to help the community get well and to battle COVID. I really lift you up on a pedestal, Tony, for that one. I don't think a lot of people know how significant it is, and they really should. So thank you.
Well, you don't have to be female to be modest. So I love what I do with the community. I love my community, and it's easy. It's easy because I work with a lot of magnificent people, with a lot of passionate people in our community and beyond the Hispanic community and all the communities. If you get a chance, look up Vintendo for Africa. They have a great event coming up. It's very similar to Premio Esperanza, very similar to Adelante Award, but it's their version of it. And so Google Vintendo for Africa and see if you can get to that event. We will have a table there, and we would be more than happy and very happy to go there and boogie with them like they boogied with us. So thank you all very much from the bottom of my heart. I love you all. Have a good night, and thank you for joining us, Betsy. Thank you again.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Edie, thank you so much. Susan, thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.